Fire in the old stove. Well, it's warming up in here. I might as well tell you about this project. So, I've got this Clark end loader. I have no idea what year it is. It's a 75B, I believe. I figured. And as you can see, there's no engine in it. So, it's at a Clark power shift. Well, actually, it's an automatic. It's got a torque converter in there. And we pulled this engine out of here. And the reason we did that is because this one is burning oil like crazy. Smoked a lot, low power. Yeah, it used about 4 gallons of oil to drive it from the field up here. So drove into the shop and we pulled her out. Now this is I think somebody said it's a 436 cubic inch Cummins. And like I said, parts are obsolete for it. It's got a PT pump on, like an 855. Like an old big cam. Cummins air compressor. So everybody wants this, it's just a boat anchor now. But the engine that's going in there is this 5.9 Cummins. And as you can see, it's a 24 valve. And I have put a P pump on it. I got some lines. And it was out of a bus. And it actually had the correct bell housing on for the old Clark transmission. And it had an Allison behind it. There's the Allison, it's a 545. But we needed to get the correct flywheel. So here's the flywheel off the old big Cummins that's in there, 6 bolts, fiber gear. All right. Dad had a Timberjack skidder back in the day with a 5.9 Cummins in and the same exact fiber gear. So we had to find a flywheel out of an old Timberjack with a 5.9 in. We ended up sourcing a flywheel from Canada. We got a used one on the way, and Dad actually had a fiber gear here for one, so that helps. So I figured I'd show this. Back when Dad logged, he said he went through like 2 of these on his skidder. But here's a fiber gear with no teeth in it. And here's the one he had on hand. So we're gonna end up using this one once our flywheel gets here from New Brunswick. So the fiber gear bolts to the flywheel and it sits in a little groove on the flywheel. And when you put your engine in, all it does is just slides right on this this other gear half here. Oops, if I can get it on there. Maybe, yeah, it goes this way. Hard to do with one hand here, but yeah. So you throw your engine in, you just slide her together and bolt the bell housing bolts on, and away you go. So we knew the flywheel existed for this 5.9 Cummins and this style transmission, so that was nice. We just had to source the part. It was kind of hard to find, but we found one. So back to the old 24 valve here. I went to Michigan to get this. It's out of a bus, like I said. And I was gonna make it work with the VP, but the guy hacked every single wire on this engine. Every single wire was cut. He just went crazy with the side cutters. So he had cut all the wires that go to the ECM, the VP wires. All he would have done was unplug one single engine harness to chassis harness, plug there. And I'll show you this too, this is hilarious. So when he was all getting crazy with the side cutters, he even cut the block heater cord. That's kind of needless. You know, cut every single hose. Bent the fan, this is the fan off. I had a 12 valve fan out of a pickup laying around. Stabbed a tine through the oil pan. We have to weld that up because we need the front sump pan to get over our differential and cross member. Hopefully that works. But the bus engine, I think, had the correct, I think that might work for us. I put a manifold off a common rail Cummins. I got Cummins parts laying all over, so I flipped a manifold around to see how it was gonna look off common rail. A grid heater laying around, so I stacked 2 of them up, and I still needed another spacer in here, which we had laying around for some reason, to get enough clearance to clear the valve lid. I just had that sitting on there to see what it looked like. So I might need a different manifold. I pulled the front case off 24 valve, put the case on off a part 12 valve I had laying around, which still had the pump on. So that's where I sourced the pump from. I think it's off like a 95 or 96 Dodge. So I don't know if it's a 160 pump or 180 pump. And then you have to swap the oil feed for the P pump to the other side because there's not enough room between the pump and the head. A 12 valve feeds it from the other side. So I had to get a restrictor fitting in there. I got that from Crazy Carl's Turbos, that fitting, and then we just made a hydraulic line, and it's just a JIC fitting back to where this bus fed the power steering pump from. And then I got a 1/2 inch fuel feed from Crazy Carl's Turbos too, and that's to, I figured that'd be easy to tie in with all standard lines and stuff. And then we'll just run our throttle cable, I think, will hook right up here, and we'll just run a shut off into the cab for the fuel shut off. So we'll have an entirely mechanical engine. One thing I did make a mistake on though is I should have slid a 12 valve cam in here, because we're gonna have to have an electric lift pump on. And I actually just picked one up yesterday off a 7.3, because people said those put out about 45 pounds of pressure. So that'll be perfect to feed the P pump, because I think you need about 30 to 40 pounds or 30 to 50 pounds to feed a P pump. But I was gonna bend the VP lines, but I figured the time I'd spend doing that, I could just go out and buy some P pump conversion lines. But I still had to bend these to fit too, and none of the holders fit on there the way they're supposed to, so I just threw them on there wherever they'd work. So it's pretty close to running. Gotta fix the oil pan, mount a lift pump, and figure out my charge air situation here. But I think that alternator will work. Obviously that oil filter's been on there a while. Another thing we'll have to do is wire these batteries, hook them up different, because this end loader was 24 volts. So we'll just hook them in parallel. And also we need to source a air compressor. And since we don't need a power steering pump, they make them for a B series that goes right in the accessory drive port. So we'll throw an air compressor on there, and because this end loader has air brakes. So a few things left to do. So like I said, a few things left to do. Flywheel's not here yet. Bolt that on. Cover lift pump hole, mount an electric lift pump. I think I'll be able to run the wire down the same wire to the lift pump that ran the fuel shutoff on the PT pump on the other engine. And then you see here, this is the factory 24 valve return manifold, I guess you can call it. So this goes back to the tank. And again, the guy that pulled it just snipped it right off. But I just cut off the steel line that would have went back to the VP44, and then slid a rubber line on it, cut off the factory return line for the P pump, slid the rubber hose on the other end, got a high performance overflow valve from Crazy Carl's as well. Since 24 valve doesn't have a crankcase vent on the tappet cover like a 12 valve does, I put the 24 valve, the ISB crankcase vent on there. 12 valve's got an oil filler right there, but 24 valve is an oil filler in the valve cover, which I see somebody broke the cap, but it still works. But I set the valves on it because I had to pull the rockers and the push tubes to pull the cam out when I swapped the case. And here's where the 12 valve crankcase vent should be, but 24 valve does not have that. And this does have the hole in the block for lift pump, but it's just a cast cam in there. So I got a whole plethora of parts just laying around. I got my harness off 24 valve, which we don't need because now we're a fully mechanical 24 valve. Lift pump off the 24 valve, but that won't work because they only put out about 10 PSI max. And we need, like I said, 30 for a P-pump to run. Here's the VP lines. Like I said, I was gonna bend those, but figured I'd save some time by not doing that. And then power string pump. So we're gonna find an air compressor that looks just like this on the front to go in the gear case. And this is power string pump off a bus, vacuum pump, and power string pump from a Dodge pickup that I pulled off the parts 12 valve engine. And then 24 valve front case. And this is cool, 24 valve front cover. It says ISB on. The ones in the pickups don't say that, so that's kind of cool. So we're gonna heat this up. Took my turbo apart. I had to steal a clamp off that turbo. Gonna heat this up to slide the two halves back together. Slide right in this flange. So after the heat, it slid right together. And the whole point of that was to orient the turbo feed line up and the drain line down. So if you look at this engine, it's backwards. I'm gonna pick up the front of the engine, the exhaust points towards the front of the engine, charge air points towards the rear. So now my dilemma will be getting some charge air piping. This piece, I thought I could point it backwards, but those bolts aren't in a square pattern. So that would be ideal. So I might have to have some excess bends here. It won't be the best, but we got to find something to steal some charge air piping off of. But the exhaust will work perfect. I think that'll line up. If we get a 90 here, that'll line up perfectly to go out the stack hole, use the original muffler and everything. So I pulled that greasy charge air pipe off that other engine, and I might pull this greasy rubber hose off there, but I think I can probably order just a 2.5 inch U. I'm sure I can find one online, some charge air piping, and I think I can find some boots around here. Boot there, a little U right here, and she'll zip over there. Yeah. Well, that's all the shop time I got today, so I'll keep everyone updated. Part 2, get this thing running.